Last week I promised that I will share one, or not just one, but a few CSV files that you can use to import sample issues in your Jira project. And I have a couple of objectives with this particular series of videos that I'm hoping to make. Number one, I want to give you sample data because when you have to, let us say, demonstrate Jira to someone, or maybe you're just learning it yourself, or maybe you are trying to understand how Jira can work for you. You need data. You need data that can show you things over a period of time. Now, of course, you can create sample projects in Jira, which I showed you, I believe, in the last video where I talked about how to do it quickly if you are desperate. But when you're able to import data in Jira with dates in the past, you can actually generate reports out of it, and reports where you have to, let us say, show something like issues created over the period of time, issues created versus resolved, or if you want to create some kind of a bar chart, then you need those old dates in your Jira instance for those projects. So today let us do one thing. Let us import one CSV file, and I have already prepared one CSV file for this particular demonstration. And this is, of course, objective number one. You can use sample data, but the other objective is, of course, to learn how you can import data in Jira. And just to give you some background about my experience with Jira, I have done plenty of migrations in the past when Jira was becoming popular, and majority of the migrations that I did, and I'm saying majority, like probably 70, maybe 80% of, I don't really have an exact count, but majority of the migrations that I did were using CSV, because people were moving from another tool to Jira, and they just want to bring whatever they can. So CSV actually is a nice way of importing data quickly. It may not be very obvious. It is not straightforward. Like you can have data in your Excel or CSV file that you can definitely import in Jira, but you need to figure out and understand how things work in Jira, especially around dates, and especially when you have subtasks or links, for example. So today in this example, I will share one CSV file, which is of course not really big, but hopefully you will learn how you can use a similar file in your case. So it is all about organizing the CSV file and making sure the date formats are correct before you can import. So right now I am looking at one project which is called as Android project. So this project is already there in Jira, and the CSV import feature works really well, but you need to have those statuses and whatever you're trying to import. If you're importing something which has existing value, like those drop down fields, for example, things like priority, for example, those priority statuses should exist in your Jira instance already. And in this example, I'm going to start by giving you a simple, but it is not very obvious how to do it, like things like epics and stories, things like how to create a subtask if you want to create a subtask. So you can actually do that using CSV file. So this is of course one project where I have a few issue types like story, bug, task, and I have epics as well. And right now we are talking about Jira software project. So the project name is Android, type is software, and let us do the import. And for import, before of course we can import, I want to of course show you this file. This is of course a CSV file which I am looking at right now. Of course it can be Excel sheet or any spreadsheet, as long as you can export it to CSV. So let us go through the columns, the fields that we have. So starting with of course summary. Summary is definitely important because summary is a mandatory field. Then I'll come back to the epic name and epic link, but let us take a look at the let us first discuss the epic name. So if you want to import epic, what you need you basically need two things, two columns. One is the epic name and then the epic link. So, and of course this is different from the summary. So epic name could be something like, let us say if you have an epic like launch Android app, so create epic name like Android -app. I prefer not using any names because sometimes it can cause problems. And then if you have stories, so right now I have two stories, and I want these two stories to be part of either Android app or iOS app. So create one additional column called epic link, and in the epic link column for those stories, you can or any issue basically, you can have these two epics as the epic link, and that is it. So this is the way to import epics, and your epics can already exist in your Jira instance. In those cases, of course, just mention the epic link and point it to the epic name. Issue ID and parent ID. So if you are trying to import, and by the way, these two columns, in fact, these four columns are not really required. These two columns are required if you want to do something with the epics. If you are trying to create a subtask, then you need one column called issue ID and then parent ID. So if, let us say, you have one bug, let us say in this case login validation not working, so this is a bug, and this bug can have subtask. So for those subtasks, mention the parent ID, which is in this case 1, as you can see, and this parent ID is of course pointing to the issue ID. So a simple way to basically map these hierarchies if you have parent and child in your data. Then moving on to, of course, status is nothing but the status name, and if you're importing it to an existing project, then you need to mention the project key, project name, and type. Type is usually software, business, and service desk. I believe so to be honest, if you try to enter something else, and you will get an error and you will figure out the correct type, but it is basically software, business, and service desk. I'll probably confirm when I upload another CSV file for service desk, for example. Then of course resolution. So resolution can be done or not done, whatever you have in your Jira instance. Then the date. So right now I have dates in the past because I want to upload some issues with old creation date. And if the resolution is done, then I think it makes sense to have the resolved date also as filled in. So when you're looking at, this is important because when you're looking at the created versus resolved issues, the resolved date will issues resolved on 20th of April will appear on the 20th of April on the timeline. So this is something that you can do. I prefer also using due dates because if you're trying to show someone how issues will appear on a calendar, then maybe you can use this field. Even now, if you're trying to import it on the cloud version, and maybe you want to have start dates and end dates, then maybe add those columns. Labels is of course important if you want to populate your Jira issues. And if you notice here, I have of course one column for each label, and this is how you can import labels. But I have a tip for you, a small tip. If you're importing data using CSV, then and I'm sharing it based on my experience. If you have to delete those issues, you have to first figure out and identify those newly imported issues. So what I normally do, I prefer using labels, so that if I've done a mistake using the CSV import, let us say I missed one column or something is not really, because usually if you don't use the correct date formats, the issues will import, but the date will be today's date. So in those cases you need to revert, and the revert in this case is nothing but deleting those issues. But to delete those issues, you need to first figure out those and identify those issues. So I use a label, and I keep this label unique so that every time I import, I have a way to delete those issues quickly based on this label. So if I perform this import again, I'll probably use something like bulk import. Maybe I'll add today's date without, of course, any spaces. So just trying to share one pro tip. So nothing pro about it. It is more about sharing my experience, because I was in trouble many times when I uploaded CSV import and I had to revert it, but I had no way to revert it. So I was doing like VLOOKUP. I was downloading the newly created issues in Excel sheet and then using VLOOKUP then to identify those issues, and then creating a filter of those issues. And I learned it the hard way, but now I know this trick. And of course, description and one environment field. So if you notice here, I'm in this CSV file, I'm just using the fields that are usually there. But of course, if you're using this, I'll of course share this file with you. I'll share one GitHub repository where you can find this CSV and also the configuration file, so that you can perform the mapping quickly. Because when you import CSV, you have to perform. You have to map these columns, and when you map these columns, you have to also at the same time, if you're able to perform the import successfully, then you should be able to download one configuration file, which I really find handy, because I don't really want to perform the mapping over and over again. In most of the cases, the mappings are usually same, apart from a couple of columns. But if you're importing the same file, I'll share the configuration file of those mappings, and then you can quickly import. Make sure those statuses and those fields are there, or maybe just try to perform an import on a Jira software project. Usually these fields like environment, epics are the epics, subtask, bug. You have those things, those configurations in Jira. So worst case scenario, it will fail and do it again. And because you have that label, you can always quickly delete those issues. So let us select the CSV file that we have. So I'll select the file, and I want to use this configuration file. So you may not see this option. You will have this option, but you may not have any file to upload when you're doing it maybe for the very first time, and you're doing mapping yourself. You anyways have the option to check the mapping and correct it if needed. And file encoding, I usually leave it as UTF-8, but this can be important if you have data with some special characters. So let us, for the time being, leave it as it is, UTF-8. We'll try to figure out if we can. I'll think about an example where we can use file encoding, and then of course CSV delimiter. Sometimes I also used semicolon, and it depends on the data. So you have to make sure that the delimiter is valid for your CSV, because sometimes you can also have commas in your description, and usually if you have commas and these delimiters maybe in the data itself, then you need to use double quotes in your description, for example. So for the time being, we have a simple CSV file. So let's proceed further. Click on the next button, and what we'll do now, we'll now take a look at the initial setup. So because we are importing this data in an existing Jira project, and the project is defined in the CSV. So right now, this CSV that we are looking at, it has of course issues for one specific project. But of course, you can have multiple projects in your Jira instance, and you can use CSV to import issues to those multiple projects. Of course, it is just a matter of, I think in the beginning, it is more important to understand the format and the way you can perform the import. The most important thing, and I always have issues with this, is the date format. Now, date format is, you need to, of course, figure out it yourself. And there is a link here that will take you to a page where you can learn about various date formats. So what I recommend is take a look at the file first, or your CSV file, because it can be different. And also open the file just in maybe a simple text editor. Maybe, for example, if I show you this file in Emacs, or maybe Notepad, or any simple any editor, maybe like Notepad++, make sure the format is correct, because I will guarantee that you will definitely face issues with the date. You have to just give it a try a couple of times, and I think after a couple of failures, you should be able to figure out. So if you look at my date format here, it is of course DD, which is here. I mean, this page, there's a link to simple date format. So DD is usually, if you look at maybe, I think, let us take a look at. So DD is usually the one with the like 0102 and so on. And if you are looking at D, single D, which is let us say just 4, so it won't have 04. But if you look at your file, my file, if I look at my file, so I have 06. So I want a double D. So this is fine. And if I can confirm, I have double D. Then of course month. Usually month is always a bit tricky. So in my file I have like 3 words, or not three letters, I guess. Yeah, 3 letters for the month. So APR or April, March, whatever. And if you go back to your example, so double M is number, but triple M is the one that we need, which is 3 letters of the month. And what we need to do now, we need to of course go back and validate. And then of course year is in my case it is 21 or 20. So let us go back to this and check. So double Y is definitely either 01 or 02, whatever, 2001, 2002, I guess. And also make sure the hours and minutes are correct. So Y is single Y is 12, double M is 08, and let us validate. So yeah, so we don't really have a double, because you can also have I mean, if you're using the PM or AM format, then you need to use, I guess, single Y. Yes, that makes sense. And M is always double, like 08, whatever. And of course, because we are using single Y, then we'll be using this additional A, which is nothing but the AM or PM. So this date format is, I know, is correct for me. And by the way, when you are, because I use this because I imported the configuration file, the date format was there for me. It can be different. It will be different for you, most likely. Just check. I think it is triple M, but I cannot be sure. You just try it yourself. But of course, if you're using the configuration file that I shared, I think it should pick up. And the last stage here is to validate the mapping. I have the mapping already from the file, but just map it to the relevant field. So for example, created from the CSV is mapped to the date created field, and you can map any field. It can be a custom field, but in this example, most of the fields are simple system fields: description, due date, environment, epic link, epic name, issue type, issue ID, labels, parent ID, priority. Remember, the labels were multiple in our multiple columns. So this is something that will be mapped. CSV will take care of it, so don't worry about it. I mean, the CSV import tool. Project key, project name, project type, resolution, resolve, date, and status and summary. For status, you can perform the mapping if needed. If you have, let us say, maybe, for example, if you're mapping from another tool to Jira and you don't really want, of course, if you don't really have those statuses in Jira instance, then you can map it. But I personally prefer that when you are performing a CSV import, make sure your data has exactly the things that Jira need to avoid any confusion. So of course, in this case, I'm just showing you that you can do mapping. It is already mapped, and there is no need to map basically, because in this case I do have done status, in progress status, and on hold along with to do. So let us begin the import. So if you begin the import, it will take some time depending upon how many issues you are importing, but in my case it will be hopefully just few seconds. So validate requirements, import users. So you can also import users, not for us. Import projects, import custom fields, import issues, and importing links, and we are done. So let us let us take a look at. You can also take a look at the log file, which is useful, but sometimes. So usually you will find the error messages on the screen, but I recommend taking a look at it just to understand when things go wrong. You have detailed information here. So let us go back. But of course, it may not be too detailed. So you need to obviously figure it out yourself. If let us say, if I perform the same import again, it will fail for a couple of issues because those epic names are already there in Jira instance. So if I perform the import again, I may not do. I will probably remove those two epics, to those two rows, but I'll keep the stories. So things need to be valid, and to learn how this CSV import works, you just need to try it yourself and try it a couple of times, and keep on trying it until you get it right. And that is the only way to learn it. It is a bit. It can be a bit tricky, although this example was simple. But if you're doing it for the very first time, you may not know how to import the epics and parents and subtasks and labels and dates. So that is why I thought I'll probably share this video, and I'll make this video and I'll share this with all of you. And what I want to do now, I want to of course take a look at the project, and let us see if we are able to import successfully or not. So the first thing that we'll look at is, when you open the project, it might open the sprints, but maybe I want to take a look at, or maybe I'll just go to the issue navigator. I think that is the place where we can take a look at everything in one go. And if you look at the backlog, I'm sure you can see all the issues in the backlog. Of course, we don't have all the things like estimates, but you do have epic links. And for some of these issues, you may have subtasks, but I think I'll probably go to the issue navigator. So let us open this quickly, and I'll probably open the issues. And when you're looking at the issue navigator, make sure the dates are correct, because you can, like for example, I prefer keeping all the dates like created, due, and resolved dates I need. So I made sure that I'm using all the dates that I have to show you. So this is actually a good thing about this issue navigator. You can actually preserve your columns. So let us take a look at the project, which is Android. And if you now look at the issues, so it looks good to me. For example, login validation not working. I believe this issue was resolved, and for resolved issues, the resolution field is filled in, the resolved date is also filled in, there are due dates filled in, labels are filled in, and environment field is filled in. Priorities, I believe, also correct. Yeah, for some of it is definitely high. And if I open one of the issue, maybe let us open the detailed view so we can take a look at the description. So this looks good to me, I guess, because I don't really see anything missing. So of course you can take a look at all the labels and and by the way, there is a label called bulk import, which I was hoping to show you, because you need this bulk label in case things go wrong. So you can always quickly, let me just show you this one. So you can always quickly show delete. Let us take a look at the subtask. Maybe let us click on the login validation not working. I believe there should be few subtasks that we did import. Maybe not. Yeah, there are. So you can see the subtasks as well. So this is of course a simple example, but I guess it will help you if you are trying to learn and looking for a sample data. As I mentioned before, I will share the link of these sample issues along with the configuration, so you can quickly perform an import and learn how it works. And that is all I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and you learned something new today. Thank you very much.